Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Sonar Masterclass. Thanks to Navico and Simrad today. We have with us Mike Bonnici. Mike, how you going, mate?
Good, Greg. You?
Yeah, I'm going really well, mate. You're a bit fuzzy there, but we'll get by. I think it's an internet thing or something going on there. COVID's hit the internet or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we'll get by. No worries whatsoever. So, folks, you know the drill. If you've been to some of these masterclasses before, make sure you jump onto the chat there. Let us know that you can hear us, because we don't know whether you can hear us or not until you tell us so. So we've got 27 or 28 people online now. And very shortly, Mike and I are going to start talking about marlin fishing. We're going to start talking about how Mike uses his sonar for marlin fishing. And it's going to be a great session. Hopefully, you've come along with some questions. God says Mike John. Obviously, a bit of a fan there, Mike. You know Mike John?
Yeah. Not sure, but yeah.
Loud and clear. Sure can. He looks stunning. Excellent stuff, guys. Okay. Thank you for the feedback. Good to know that everybody can hear us. So, Mike, we're headed into summer. It's a good time of year for marlin fishing, yeah?
Yep. No, it's about to all start rolling down here.
Yeah. So tell us about what's in store for Sydney siders who want to get out and chase marlin over the next few months, mate.
Generally, Sydney, it usually starts December. I mean, we caught a couple of weeks ago. There was a few fish kicking around. Generally, anyone out there, if the water's warm enough, sort of 21. Once it hits that sort of 21 degrees, generally they'll start filtering down if the water's good enough. A bit of slack water.
Yep.
But sort of December, January is pretty good off Sydney, I reckon. It's probably my favourite 2 months. January is probably the pick of the bunch.
Well, that's what we like to hear, because it's good timing for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Few weeks down the track. Now, folks, we're going to talk about sonar. We've got some screenshots that Mike supplied that we're going to talk through and do a bit of interpretation and analysis on to help you to get a handle on what it is that Mike's looking for on his screen. But we're not limited to just talking about sonar. So if you've got general questions about marlin fishing that you want to ask Mike, then please feel free, and we're happy to answer those questions as we go along. But Mike, we might start by getting a screenshot up there and having a bit of a chat, eh?
Yeah, no worries.
Let's bring up the first one. All right.
Yeah, so that's basically just, general. I would say that's probably maybe up at Port Stephens, looking at the temperature, or down south where the bait stacks up a lot better than off Sydney. You do get it like that occasionally off Sydney, but it doesn't hang around for very long. And yeah, that's basically where you can see the bait. A lot of the bait sort of stays, it doesn't get that redness to it until fish are balling it up and they're getting a lot tighter. That's where the Simrad, I find you can just tell what the bait's doing a lot of the time, whether it's happy bait, we call it, happy bait, or bait that's getting harassed.
Scared bait.
Yeah.
Happy bait and scared bait. So yeah, so the red indicates they're all packed tightly together. Any theories about why it is that they pack more tightly in places away from Sydney as opposed to in the Sydney area?
I think it must be to do with eddies and currents, basically. I mean, you can see the car park where the Eastern Australia current comes tearing down the hill. Usually the current's pushing out wider and it back eddies it, like there's a little kink in the shelf. The way this is personal, this could be totally wrong, but the way I look at it is if the car park usually fires when the current's going back up and up the hill and to the west. And I find that's the sort of the back eddy off the Eastern Australian current pushing straight back up the shelf, and it just creates an upwelling, and that's where the bait all stacks along the shelf there.
Because I know, looking at even just estuaries and river systems and coastal systems, the bait are always much more tightly packed when there's a bit of current. They find that little pocket, that eddy, that pressure point, and that's where they sit. But if you've got no current, they tend to disperse a bit more. So I guess it's the same out at sea as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's funny is once they get into that sort of area, as long as a big push of current doesn't come through, they seem to hold for a long period of time. It's funny, you can get days of current and the bait will go down deep and stay deep, and the fishing can be tough, and then it'll switch back around again, and the fish will fire up again.
Okay. And what are the predominant bait species? What are these likely to be? Is it
generally slimy mackerel and yellowtail? Yeah.
All right. Now we've got a question from Cliff. I might bring that up on the screen for you, Mike. So Cliff's asking, would we mind explaining tranium modules used in regards to the screenshots?
Yeah. So I use the S5100. My transducers, I've got the B275 high-low wide. A 275, I think it doesn't. The B is just the type of like the type of mounting. I think the 275 is a 2-frequency transducer. So a lot of people use the SS175 or the high or low or medium. There's all different types, but the high is probably the best for the game for marlin fishing. It's a big wide beam, and yeah, you cover a lot of ground on your boat. Yeah.
So it's all about covering as much water as you can, so that you're finding the bait. Is that the?
Yeah, basically finding the bait, and it's very easy to see targets. Like that's probably a pretty small target on that screenshot. You're in sort of 75 fathoms, so the water's pretty deep. So you're probably covering, I don't know exact angles, but probably 100 meters below you in width.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. And of course, this sort of a shape to the bait, that's an indication they're being a bit worried, getting pushed around.
Yeah, you can see. It comes to a point where we look at this when we're trying to catch baits, and sometimes you're catching really small bait, and on the sounder, when it's not tightly packed like that, you can see bait that's bigger than smaller bait, and you go, "Yep, let's try that. Let's try that bait school because it looks like bigger bait." And generally, it works. Like it's crazy how it can show you a difference between a 10 centimeter slimy or a 30 centimeter one.
Yep.
When there's millions of them.
And I'm noticing also the water temperature there, 24.3. Is that the?
Yeah,
what are the sort of optimal water temperatures?
I would say, depending what you're fishing for, like stripe marlin, probably anywhere from sort of 21.5 to they'll be in 26. But yeah, I would say the optimum would be around 22 to 23 for stripes, and then blacks probably a little bit warmer.
Yep.
They're generally in that sort of. They'll be in 20 degrees to 26 degrees or 27 degrees. But a good temp's that mid range. I find 23.5 is pretty comfortable for everything.
Yep. Cool. All right, shall we move on to the next screenshot?
Yeah, it's very similar. Just where the bait gets thick, it's getting balled up, and there's a couple of marlin feeding on there, pretty hard. But sometimes you see those shots. You'll see that bait doing that, but you won't see the marlin in them, and you might just be on the other side of the school. And you do a couple of passes over it, and then you go, "Oh, there it is." Or he might be up on the surface already because they hear the boat, and for some reason they just shoot up to the boat pretty quickly. A lot of the time, you'll see you probably got some in this later where you see the sounder shots. You can see them rocketing straight up to the back of the boat. Yeah. What no reason? Yep. It's just maybe curiosity or whatever it is.
And I was going to ask that question. The first two screenshots we've looked at, the marlin are sitting on top of the school of bait fish. Is that typically where they are, or do they get all around underneath them as well?
Generally, it's hard to actually see what's going on there because it's trying to show a lot of area in the one. There's a lot of volume in the one screen, if that makes sense.
Yep. So, I mean, if you were headed out, to your fishing destination, you've already done a bit of research, looked at, rip charts and all those sorts of things, picked a general area, and this pops up on your screen.
Yeah.
What's your strategy from here? You've found bait.
Yeah. So if there's not a lot, if this is on the screen, there's obviously a lot of bait around. So we'll either have bait already or jig bait. Generally, we're always sort of trying to have bait when we're out there. Catch it, and then we'll either tow live baits around, tow teaser lures around, and try and switch, just depending on how many fish there are. Like it depends what area you are too. Like for instance, like say Sydney or Coffs Harbour or areas that generally don't hold lots of bait in one area, if that makes sense. We'll generally tow teaser lures around more so, and try and raise the fish onto the lures and then switch them onto a bait.
Okay.
Or just tow lures around, but switching is pretty fun.
Yep. Okay. So you're saying, well, there's no bait schools here to draw the fish to the top, so we'll create our own bait school, being the boat and the teasers and all the
and you also you can go faster, so you can cover more ground.
Yep. Okay.
That's the biggest thing. So if you're towing baits, you can't really go that quick, sort of 3 knots, 2 to 3 knots. Whereas you're towing teasers, you can do 7 knots.
Yep. Okay. Cool. All right, we're going to move on to the next screenshot. And folks, as I said earlier on, of course, these sessions are all about your questions. So be sure to fire some questions through as you go. Tell us about what we're looking at here, mates. It's a nice fish.
That was me and that's my wife, Haley. That was a really big inshore striped marlin. That was actually caught in 30 fathoms off Sydney. It was well over 100. I don't know how big it was, but it was one of the biggest ones we've caught. Put on a pretty good show for about an hour and a half on 24 kilos. So yeah, no, we were pretty. It was just me and her out there.
Look at the colours.
Yeah, that was a good fish.
Stunning. All right, back to screenshots, mate.
Yeah.
There's a bit going on this screen. There's a few.
Yeah, you know something's happening when you see all this. Like know, there's bait that's just up, down. Like a lot of the time, once it's funny too. I probably should have sent you a photo of bait that's not happy.
Right.
That's happy.
That's happy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the way of like it's chilled. It's all flat. Marlin aren't pestering it, and then all of a sudden it can be like that, and then all of a sudden tide change will come, or the fish are just starting to feed, and you'll just notice the bait. You still might not be marking fish. You'll just notice the bait just all pyramiding up or getting forced into bait balls, and you just know something's going to happen sooner or later. Like in the next, it's basically when everything starts to, you're looking out a lot more, and it's going to go down.
Yep. And you can see here. I mean, there's a couple of fish here. Looks like the bait, part of the bait's been split off, so the school's been split in two. There's something going on over here. There's a vertical surface here as well. So there's a bit happening on this screen. There's a few fish around. Even if you didn't see those marks, you know that there's going to be some activity in that area.
Yeah.
All right. We got a question from Cameron, so we might bring that up on the screen. He's asking whether you ever drop a livey down on a sinker or a downrigger.
Yeah, definitely. Not so much a downrigger. I mean, it's probably not a bad idea. It's just I try to keep things a little bit more. I have used a downrigger, and I don't see the need for it, to be honest. It's just another thing to just sort of clear out of the way.
Yep.
Once it's down there, if you're dropping a downrigger bomb 100 meters or 80 meters or whatever, it's pretty painful to get back up. I mean, you can get the electric ones, and I try to use whatever I can that's better, but I think sometimes it's simple is a bit better than trying to complicate things with a downrigger.
Yeah, when you've got an active marlin, it's, as you say, just one more thing you've got to get out the way.
Yeah. And I find too, when they pop it out of the clip, sometimes you got to have the clip pretty hard, especially if you're towing a downrigger and you've got it down deep. I don't know. I've had it. I did have it, and when they pop the clip, they feel something's not right, and they don't. It's hard to hook up with them. You got so much belly, and sinker. I use sinkers sometimes, especially probably more in competition, where you got to bomb a fish that's down deep, and there's lots of boats up on the surface, like lots of boats around, and fish are staying deep. That's when you'll generally bomb them. I find it quite fun. Some people sort of don't rate it, but I enjoy sort of marking something and like, drop it down. He's 80 meters. Drop it to 80 meters, and you watch. You can actually. There's probably some screenshots I'll show you later where you can probably see the sinker going down and fish coming up to the bait and eating it. It's all pretty visual through. It's like watching TV, really.
Yeah. We've got a bit of video we can show, I think, later on as well. So, mate, what's your rig look like if you're dropping a sinker down there? What does that look like?
It's really just what I could probably. I don't know if you'd be able to see it. Is it blurry? It's really just like your normal live bait rig. I'm going to pull one out. I didn't really have it there.
I'll put you on the spot now.
Yeah. my rig bags aren't that. This is what a pole of hooks would look like. But basically, your live bait rig. This is what I have to deal with on the boat generally. And then all I do is just either rubber band one onto the back, or sometimes I have a couple of different weights on snap swivels. And instead, like this is where, that's basically it tied up. It's just a hook.
Yep.
And then you got the back section of it that goes onto your swivel. And then I usually just hook the sinker to the back of the swivel.
Okay.
On the opposite side of this, so this can still spin if it needs to.
Okay. Very good. All right. Let me take you off the spot again. Bring the screenshot back up. So we've got a question from Mike Const. He's asking what settings he should use. 275 HLW, Evo NSS 12.
Mate, to be honest, Simrad's super easy. I probably don't read into it too much. I find there's a couple settings, and I think I run it on TVG1. The noise rejection's on low. That's probably one of the biggest thing I've found. And a few of my mates have sort of said, I'm buying a new transducer because my sounder doesn't read like yours. And I'm like, mate, you've got everything the same as mine. You know, it can't be. And then it actually happened to a mate of mine, and he was literally about to buy a new sounder. And I didn't believe it would be a little setting, but the noise rejection can pixelate the picture a fair bit. And I don't know what, I think it's obviously got something to do with something I probably don't know about, but it works. And it's happened to a couple of my friends, and they've all said the same thing. There's like, oh my God, it's clear down.
Yep.
And that was basically just the noise rejection was on low. It had to be on low. They had it on medium or high. TVG is more sort of up on the surface. It clears up the surface, but you sort of want to have clutter in the surface as long as you can see it.
Yep.
See through it. You don't want it to be sort of blacked out.
If you cut out all that clutter, you cut out a lot of important information as well. So
yeah.
Let's bring up another question from Brad. So Brad's asking, what makes you switch from Chirp to 200 hertz and vice versa? On your screenshots.
Yeah, I'm a 200 hertz person, I'd say, over Chirp, mainly because I think 200 hertz reads better at speed. Just because, sorry, just reading some of the comments. It's one of my mates. It's not my mate, actually.
There's always one, mate. There's always one.
Yep. Just block him now.
I could bounce him out.
No, so yeah, I do switch back and forth to try and find the better. Obviously, high Chirp's multi-frequencies, so whereas 200's one frequency. I mean, when you're chasing Marlin and on bait, it's not really rocket science. They're, a fish this big to a fish over 100 kilos, or so it's pretty much chalk and cheese. They stand out. They stand out pretty predominantly. So yeah.
So another question about the Chirp. So this time from Andrew, he's asking, do you run Chirp or 200 for Inshore blacks in less than 60 meters?
Again, Inshore blacks, there'll be some screenshots that come up here, and either one is fine. I run I usually leave it on 200, but it's personal. It's not. I don't even have a personal preference, to be honest. If someone flicked it to high Chirp, it would do the same thing for me.
You're not going to be upset.
Nah.
All right, let's bring up another screenshot, mate. Or this one's actually I'm going to actually get us off the screen here if I can figure out how to do it, so that we can actually see this. We can actually see this image. So nice shot, mate.
Yeah, that was a pretty hectic day, actually. That was sort of the last day before COVID hit, the first time, and we all got locked into our home, and we I think we tagged 16 fish up off Port Stephens that day.
16 a day. It's a good day.
Yeah, it was a good day. It was just fish were everywhere, and yeah. No,
all right.
We made the most of it, and then we weren't allowed. Then we weren't allowed back.
Yeah, not so great. All right, mate. So Ben's asking about bombing a bait down to a fish. Is the sinker into another rod and line and then to the band and snap swivel with the bait, or is it simply sinker to swivel on the bait?
Yeah, sinker to swivel. So one rod, no two. I mean, sometimes the sinker stays on and you can grab it, and depending what size band you're using, you just got to be careful when you're on the leader. I usually use a band. They're pretty hard to break a band these days. Even the smaller ones.
Yep. All right. Let's move on to another screenshot, mate.
Yeah, so that's basically it, bombing a fish. See, I've seen them down deep, thinking that they're not going to come up. That's me dropping baits down from the top, dropping a bait down, and that's the fish rocketing up to the boat, and then they've seen the baits and eaten them on the way up. So that's pretty much a.
So this is the bait coming down here, is it? And this is the fish going up.
Yeah, I think we dropped two. I think we've dropped a bait early. I don't know. I'm actually not sure whether that's I mean, because technically that would be before we've seen the fish. You know what? That could be dropping for bait, like dropping the bait jig down to try and catch it, because we generally try and catch fresh bait all day. So I would imagine that's what happened. Then we've marked some fish, and a lot of the time too, when you're catching bait, it attracts the fish up to the boat. Like I said, it's not a bad thing to jig bait, even for no reason.
Now, all the bait here, tightly packed along the bottom, is that a common thing in 80 and 90 fathoms?
Yeah. Some days it's all like that, and you don't get it up above 40 fathoms, and you just catch. And the fish are thick. It's a very, I can't explain it. Sometimes I almost prefer a carpet of bait on the bottom, and then you find the high points, because the fish. It's very easy to find the fish there, because it's very easy to find the fish when if it's all flat, and then all of a sudden there's a peak. If that makes sense.
Yep. Well, there's a great question here. I have to bring this up on the screen, mate. So, what's the secret of standing on the bow of your boat? Are your feet glued to the gel coat?
I've got a good balance. No, it's actually it looks harder than it is, but I've made, like, even this boat was sort of designed a bit more so the roof acts as a leaning post. I actually had an extension bar put on the front of the bow of the boat, and then it's the front's all sea decked, so it's all pretty grippy.
Yeah, makes a difference.
I've only fell off once, but it was a glass out.
Got a bit too confident.
Yeah.
All right. Next screenshot, mate. Tell us about this one.
Again, just pyramids. Like, I think that one there, you can see I've seen the pyramid. I've turned around, gone back over the same bait school.
Yep.
And then there it is. There's the marlin there, where I didn't see it on the first pass.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's pretty much a textbook. You go, oh, there's the bait sort of getting harassed. Do a Yui, come back over it, and you go, oh, that's why it's getting harassed, and then try and catch it.
And again, you didn't need to see that marlin mark up to know that it was going to be worth having a fish at that particular spot.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Let's rattle through to the next one.
So this is inshore stuff. You can see how much thicker and how much bigger the marks are. We're only in sort of, my screenshots are a bit dodgy, but 60 meters or something, so 40 fathoms. But yeah, inshore fishing is fun, especially when you mark a fish, because it depends where you are and what size they are. Like, you can mark, you can go up the coast, and there's the little black, when you have a real little black run, like last year, where the fish were sort of 10 to 30 kilo average. They almost, I don't know, they're almost like a reef fish. They can turn up, they'll just be anywhere, in anything. Whereas we don't seem to get them as much sort of Sydney and south. Like from Port Stephens, they get a lot, and then down home, like Sydney wise, we do get the odd small ones, but our blacks are generally, like, I would say average 40 to 100 kilos. Okay. And so, even when I'm in the shallows, if I mark a fish like that, I go, oh, that's a decent sized fish. It's not a 30 kilo black or whatever. Sometimes I've had some massive marks, and you're like, oh, here we go, this is a big one.
So you've got a few you got a few fans here, mate. There's a bit of banter going on in the chat, so I'll bring some of it up from time to time, just to good for a laugh. All right. Let's have a look at another screenshot. Tell us about this one.
So that's probably a pretty solid standard, like a solid black from off Sydney. I think we were fishing a tournament, the Sydney game fish, Botany Bay game fishing comp. We tagged one pretty early, so it's just a good little action shot.
Yep.
That's basically the sort of it's one of those catch-22s. I used to catch a lot of marlin and not tag them, and I used to grab their bills, and I think that tagging them was sort of cheating as well. But grabbing their bills, mate, it's good, it's fun, and honestly, everyone who would do it. Like, I'd done it for a long time, but my boat copped it, like, to the point where it got scratched. Like, it's even the new boat that I've got in one season, and even when trying not to grab them, really just having them up against the side of the boat, cracking them off, they built the shit out of it. And having a black boat's not the greatest color for
it. Shows all the marlin scratches.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a couple of questions here and a bit more banter coming up, but you're running a dredge whilst you're walking liveys.
Yeah, I run a strip teaser. So it's pretty much That's all I run, a strip teaser.
Yep. Okay, cool. Carl's got a question about scroll speeds, 6 to 8 knots, mate.
×2. I run ×2 on everything, pretty much for everything I do. I think it's not too short and not too long, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't stretch out the screen, because the scroll speed basically just stretches the screen. It doesn't really make anything clearer. Like, obviously normal speed is fine. I just, that's my personal ×2.
Yep. All right, cool. Leaders, mate. Tell us about leader sizes for live baiting marlin.
So I run mainly for competition, like for tournament legal. I run, going to test me probably now. So I think you're allowed 30 foot all up. I run a wind on leader, so that way we can grab our wind on, and we've got a bit of a thicker leader to hold on to. Generally 150 to 200 pound wind on, and then I run a 9 foot bite leader. So that's basically, this thing is 9 foot and 30 foot. Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah. So sorry. And these things are pretty disposable. I probably, if I go out for a day, I try, and if I don't have 20, obviously depending what sort of day it is, you can catch 8 fish and go through 20 litres some days. I know that doesn't make sense, but you get a lot of bites and you miss them and they just chafe the leader up, and I just like that fresh ones ready to go.
I'm not sure if you want to answer that, mate.
He knows the answer to that. That's why he's asking you.
It's going to get pointed straight back at him, I'm pretty sure. So George is asking, of all the marlin, mate, which ones do you like the most?
It's pretty hard to beat blue marlin. I don't catch many of them anymore, but they're the ones that are the most exciting. I mean, look, they've all got their own thing. Blacks are fun because, you catch them inshore generally. You do get them on the shelf, and they can range from 10 kilos to 1,000 pounders. So they've got their thing. Stripes are cool because they give you a good bite. Like when they're all up on the surface, all lit up. They're like a kid basically. They're trying to play with their bait before they eat it. So and then blue marlin are just big and impressive and make a big show. And they're all good.
All right, another good question here. Let me just bring us up on the screen where we can see us all. So, how long do you wait before setting the circle hook, depending on how the bite occurs?
Good question, Sondel. That's what I made. Again, like if the fish is up and jump, like sometimes you'll get a bite, they'll feel the clip pop, and they don't like it, so they're jumping before you can even do anything. So if that happens, I just go straight up to strike, and it's probably a 50-50. A general good bite is they pop the clip and they just swim down. I'm going to stop reading the comments.
I'm going to have to bump. I've never bumped anyone from any of these.
No, they're all right. It's they're distracting me. I don't even know what I was talking about. What was I talking about, actually?
You were talking about when the fish...
setting the hook.
Bump.
So a textbook bite would be that. If you see that video, that's pretty textbook. I don't know if you want to play it or we can play it later.
Yeah, we can play it now, yeah. You want me to play it now?
Yeah, play it now, and you can basically...
Here we go.
You can see the fish come up. Can I talk? Yep, he's on that one. He's on the rigger, on the short rigger. Oh, go. There he goes. There you go. You grab it. Freeze ball it. Come on, Bonnie. No, not yet. Pull it back down. All right, now go up on slowly. Lift the rod. That was bloody awesome. Hey! Yeah, boy.
Well, there you go.
About that long. I don't like waiting too long. Like, they generally eat the bait head first, so the first thing that goes in their mouth is hook. So, yeah.
Yep. All right. Now I think there's a couple more questions here. Let me just catch up with the feed. So if you're fighting a fish that's dogging it out down deep, do you sit over the top and wait for him to come up, or do you drive off and change the angle? Great question.
Never sit on top of them. I can't sit still anyway. So, and generally, if I was on the rod, I'd probably say don't drive away from it. But generally, I'm just left and right. If it's sitting down deep, you're just trying to change. Like if it's the worst case scenario is when the fish is hooked in this side of the mouth, and it goes around that peck of the fin, underneath the fin, and it comes out there because you really can't change the angle, and that's when you get stuck in a dog of a fight.
Yeah.
Because you can't, like the line's back from here, unless he comes up and jumps and frees it, you sort of can be in for a bit of a shit fight, unfortunately. But when it's here and it's back like that, if you change the angle, you flick it across their eye, or, you know, you flick it across something else and they just go, oh, you know, what was that? They'll come up and jump, and that's when you can sort of tag them or, you know, crack them off, however you want to do, whatever way you're doing it.
Yep. Spur them into action.
Yeah.
Now, mate, is it possible to tag a fish so hard that the pole goes out the other side of the fish?
Who wrote that, Sundor? Depends the size of the fish. I've definitely lost. Sometimes you hit the fish, and the tag. You know, you think they're closer. You think they're further than they are. So you're stabbing for a bit further away, and you hit them, and you let go of the pole. And I've seen it all, but it is what it is. What do you do? It's fishing.
Alrighty. So if you had a fish out of one port on the East Coast for the rest of your career, where would it be and why?
Oh,
if you had to fish out of one port.
I would say Gold Coast. Not that I fish there much, but those pluggers get everything. Gold Coast, Brisbane, somewhere there. It's very versatile. Like you get the southern species and you get the northern species. They get great blue marlin bites. They get black marlin on tap. They don't even look at striped marlin because they've just got too many other stuff going on. They get TTs, they get mackerel, they get lucky. Us Sydney-siders and Victoria, where poor Victorians only get a couple of species. Every couple of hours you drive north, you get a few more species.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
We've already had that one. Sorry, let me have a look. So Lee Rayner's popped up. Very important question from Lee. How are you, Lee?
So I think that's a different Lee Rayner.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, there's two.
What's the benefit of running an S5100, mate?
What's the benefits of running 5100? So that's a hard
question. Similar question. Do you see a major?
It's a hard question because I've never not run one. The Simrad tech guys say you don't need one with the new Evo S3s. So I just had one in my boat, and I've always had one. And personally, I've seen it without it, and there's not much difference. I have one because I have one.
Because that's what you've always done.
It's the honest truth.
All right. But Doug's asking, do you prefer to reverse down on a fish for a tag shot or go forward?
Oh, look, reversing gives you a better angle because generally if the fish is swimming away from you, the fish is swimming away and you're coming in from behind, you've got all the back of the fish to get. Same with going forward. My boat doesn't reverse that well, so I'm generally chasing him forward. And if it's flat and I think I can get a shot in, I'll reverse. But I generally go forwards.
All right, cool.
I think it's personal though. Like if you think if your boat, some boats reverse really well and maneuver well. Mine's got a flooding keel, so mine fills up with water when I reverse pretty hard. Like it's always full of water, but it just bogs down a bit more.
Right. So Ben's noticed in the video that you run the motor tilted to create more prop wash.
That's a funny question, actually. The old Evinrudes, when I had the Gen 1s, would clog up if I didn't run them trimmed up. And foul plugs.
So nothing about creating commotion at all.
No, it wouldn't make a difference. Well, no, it looks like it, but it's more of a habit thing for me. And again, with the flooding keel, the motors and the Evinrudes, they sit quite low in the water. So just trimming the motor up just gets the power head out of the water all the time. That's my thought of it. There's no real fishing thought of it.
All about practicality. All right. So Andrew's asking, mate, if you're marking fish but you're not getting a bite, what do you do to get the bite? What do you change?
It depends. Like there's no point trying to hook a big fish on a light leader. And if they're going to eat, they're going to eat 150 pound. They're going to eat, sometimes, yes, I would say the bite, you'll get the bite, but you'll probably lose the fish if you're running 60 or 80 pound. If you're on the shelf and the fish are generally 50 to 100 kilos, I think sometimes it's a time thing. Some days are different. Some days they're biting all day. Some days they're biting early. Some days they're biting late. Yeah, I definitely change tactics. Like a lot of the time, I won't stop on fish that I mark, even though they don't look like they're coming up. We'll just keep driving and turn around and drive over them again and drive over them again. And then if it's social fishing, yeah, I'll just, it's sort of interesting watching. I like watching them come up to the boat rather than sort of going down to them. But if it's not working and you want to catch fish, drop down to them. You know and that does work. Like there's no doubt about it. A lot of fish get caught bombing.
All right, one more question, then we've got a couple more screenshots we can go through. So, do you run underwater lights when you're live baiting?
No, I've never had them.
That was a quick one. Maybe we'll do one more.
I think about. Oh yeah, it's just more stuff to have on the boat to go wrong, really. Which side of the ramp do you launch it like?
All right, one more serious question, then we'll have some screenshots. Do you ever use yakkers for bait, or is it only slimies?
No, yakkers work 100%. I've caught a lot of black marlin on yakkers, but yeah, no. The bad thing about yakkers is they don't tow well. So I personally think blacks like yakkers better. I've caught. When I first started marlin fishing for blacks, we used to just drift for them. And we used to catch all of it. We used to have one slimy, one yakka, and we caught a lot of fish on it. We caught most fish on yakkers. But again, drifting bait balls rather than towing live baits.
Towing baits, yeah. All right. Let's switch back. We've got 3 more screenshots to go through, mate. Tell us about what's going on here.
Yeah, that's just, you can see it's like a decent sized black marlin. Well, it's a marlin. It is a black because we caught them. But yeah, I think that's Port Stephens. 23.5. Yeah, that'd probably be. There was a pretty good bite up there a couple of years, well, last year and the year before. The fish were a bit bigger. But yeah, same thing. Just you can be marking nothing. Sometimes, again, you probably see where I've marked that fish and I've turned around and gone back over it, and it's sort of a mirror image, if that makes sense.
Yep. So this is the fish.
Yeah.
In different directions. Yeah.
And you know that, to be honest, that fish obviously isn't coming up because I've run over it again, and that's when sometimes I'll stop on them and just drift. Sometimes because when you stop, your baits will swim down. And they just come up, or even try and jig the bait. So then all of a sudden they sort of get they see what's going on up there.
Yeah, bit of commotion, a bit of vibration, something to attract them up, make them look up. So Mike wants to know if he can follow you out one day, mate.
He needs more friends.
It's relentless, isn't it? All right.
There needs to be one guy.
On to the next one. What do we got on the screen here, mate?
Yeah, again, that's just tight bait. Like once the bait's all thick like that, you can tell something's feeding on it. The marlin's pretty low. A lot of time I find if the marlin are actually up on the surface, some days the bait will be like that, but the fish won't be. You won't mark any fish, and you can catch half a dozen or 3 or 2, whatever. Like, but they're up high. They're up high, and you see a lot of them. Some days they're just tailing the sea, and I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they do when they tail. Whether it's their sleeping pattern or it's their because sometimes you can drive a bait right in front of them and they'll eat it. Some days they won't even look at it and they'll pretend. And you spook them. It's like you wake them up and they take off. Whether they're traveling from area to area, how they do it, I don't know. I don't understand it, but we just try and catch them.
We need a Julian Pepperell or someone like that to fill in the blanks on that question.
Well, they don't really tail when it's glass out. Like you rarely see fish sort of swimming along the surface. So almost like they just use the pressure waves from the wind to push them down sea.
Well, of course, there is when you've got that length of fetch, and a decent wind blowing, there is actually a current flowing along the surface there, so they may well be using that current.
Oh, they definitely like some days you'll have 20 fish tailing beside you, and you're like not in one pack, but throughout the day you'll see them, and you're like, and you either catch a lot of fish or you're not catching a lot of fish. I can't explain it, but yeah.
Yep. All right, that's fishing. So last of the screenshots, mate.
Yeah, that's just like a pretty, there's not much bait there, but there's a fish there, obviously. So it's again, I drive around a lot of times, and sometimes you'll be driving on nothing, and it's how you find a lot of fish, just by covering ground. It's like, and it's like when you're snapper fishing, really, you do a lot of drifts, you mark fish, you catch fish there, you find new spots. And with Marlin, there's no real right and wrong spot. Like especially inshore blacks, they will go. It doesn't need to be slimy mackerel. They'll eat sweep, they'll eat trevally, they'll eat maydays, they'll eat anything.
Yep. It looks like there's just a little tiny bit of a bump or rise there that's maybe holding the bait.
Yeah. I've done it a lot where I'm just thinking, I'll just do a big loop here, or I'm traveling from one spot to another, and you're running over dead ground, and then all of a sudden you'll just see some bait. You're like, turn around, and the bait, the rigger might have already gone off because you're like, okay, well that's why it was like that.
Yep. All right, very good. I'm going to shut down the screenshots now, mate. Bring us back up onto the screen. We've got a few questions coming through still. So one from Matthew asking about, can you explain the difference between 1 kilowatt dual channel transducers running from the Sonar ports on the MFD versus running from the S5100?
I'm sorry, mate. I probably can't because I've never run them straight from the Sonar. I've only run them through the... I've only ever run them through the S5100. Can you explain the differences between the 1 kilowatt dual channel transducers? So the dual channel transducers is it's more of a mounting thing, I'm pretty sure. Like, say, I think the 175s, it just gives you the options of what you like. It's just more of there's two things. I think you can get 275s in transom mount, pocket mount, chest mount, and the B275, which is fairing block mount. Don't hold me to any of this because it's just and I'm no tech expert. But a lot of people, some people like, if you go up to Queensland, a lot of people want the medium chirp because they want to find isolated rocks on the bottom. And high chirp's not that great. There you go. Nick's from Simrad, from Navico's jumped in. He said independent power, ping, range, and speed control when using the S5100. Okay, so that's what it gives you. If that makes sense.
Thank you, Nick. Very good. All right. I'm bouncing around between chats here. Let me bring up another one. So what brand of leader do you like? And do you use Lumo sinkers?
What brand? So I use two brands of leader, and both of them, one's Neo, and the other one's the Oshia fluorocarbon. Anywhere, depending on the size of fish, from 50 pound to 150 pound. Basically, but on average, if I was fishing the shelf, I'd run 130 pound, 120, 130 pound to 150. If I'm fishing inshore, it's generally 80 to 100. If I'm fishing a comp and they're finicky and you want to just get bites and try and catch fish quickly, then you just got to try and drop down. And I personally don't think leader thickness is much. I think the fish are they're not. If they want to eat it, they'll eat it with 100 pound or 50 pound. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. All right, now guys, I'm going to start to wrap this up now. We've been going for a little while. We've run out of screenshots. If you've got questions to ask, please fire them through now. We've got a few still up on the screen. We'll work through those. But fire your questions through before we shut it all down. So Andrew Griffin, where's the best spot to catch dollies? Pretty keen to get a good one this season.
He's been going out every day. Rain, hail, or shine. You'll get one, mate. Don't worry.
All right, Travis, best way to run a sounder for 300 meters plus for deep dropping.
Look, I don't do a lot of it anymore, but when I used to, on low frequency, high frequency is probably no good at all for 300 meters. Ideally, you want a narrow beam, so you're not. Again, don't hold me to all this stuff. I'm not, but I used to run my high low. I think it reads probably 1,000 meters. Obviously, the slower you're going when you're deep, the better it reads. But definitely a low frequency or 50 kilohertz. Yep,
very good. Single or twin hooks in skirts, and why?
Marlin fishing, I pretty much only run singles. The only reason I run singles is I find doubles, you can bend a hook out because of two hooks. I think it's a cleaner bite. I don't run a lot of lures, mainly blue marlin fishing with hooks. Or if you're fishing off places like Sydney when there's a fish roaming somewhere, you've got no bait and you've got to run hooks. That's pretty much. What was that with the question? Was it single, twin? I run twin hooks sometimes on tuna. I find tuna a bit harder to hook on singles if I'm running a skirt. Hook up or hook down. Sorry, I'll let you read the questions out.
Yeah, no, that's right. You're welcome. You're welcome to. So hook up or hook down.
No. That's just, whichever way they fall out. They reckon hook down for blue marlin, hook up for striped marlin, but you don't really know what marlin's going to jump on. So,
all right, what do we got here? So top tips for chasing marlin. So top 3 down the coast south of JB.
I don't really go south of JB.
Top tip is don't go south of JB. Is that it?
Too far. Nah, I don't like. Everyone knows me. I don't like going south. So what? Top 3 tips for chasing marlin. I mean, look. Once you go JB or south, every port seems to hold bait. I don't know what it is, but I don't think the current pushes as hard once it goes past Point Perp. I almost think back eddies comes back up. Like that's where the East Coast current sort of stops and starts
swirls around a bit.
Yeah, starts to, and they sometimes the bites Bermuda, sometimes the bites Marine Blower, Tathra. There's all the ports that have their bites, and obviously there's bites going on that no one knows about because no one's fishing But I mean, if I was going down the South Coast, generally South Coast fishing is bait fishing, switching or live baiting. There's lots of bait down there. Generally, you normally can't run over the shelf without running over bait. Even when you were going tuna fishing, you don't really fish the shelf area, but on your way out, you just run over bait. So
Gary's asking if you only run liveys for marlin.
No. Oh, say it again. So what was it? Do you only run liveys for marlin? No. I mean, as in, we run lures. We switch with live baits or dead baits. I like bait fishing. There's no doubt about it. I like live baiting. That's. I don't do it for much else besides marlin fishing. I'd rather a bait over a lure, mainly just for the hookup rate. Really, I mean, if they ate a lure and stayed on, it'd be all right. But the problem I hate is I hate when you hook up on a lure. Generally, you're driving away from the fish to keep the line pressure tight, and by the time the fun part comes, the fish is 300 meters away and gone down, and you've got to keep pressure, so you can't really just drive straight at the fish like you can with a circle hook. That's the main reason why I like catching them on a circle hook rather than a J hook.
Okay. Good question here. How do you determine if the bait you're looking at on the sound is leather jackets or bait fish?
You drop a bait jig down. Or an electric reel for Sondor. He doesn't have normal reels. He just has electric bait rods.
Alrighty. How do you go about bridle rigging your baits, mate?
How do I go? Can't you explain how to bridle rig your baits? No, I can't. You get that? And we just put a noose around its tail. No. So obviously that's the bridle. It's 50-pound Dacron. I usually run a 10-0 hook, depending on the bait. If the bait's really small, I'll put a smaller hook on. But some people would like 8-0s, 9-0s. Everyone has their own personal thing. There's no real secret to it. It's just little crimp, no tied on thing. I just run that through the nose, so that I hook it back over, twist it a few times, and then just basically slide that back down, pin it back through the loop it came in, and that's basically all you got. So that's basically tight to its nose. I don't really like leaving it sloppy because the hook can sort of go around and catch itself. I just try and keep it tight to the front of its nose.
Very good. All right. What's your best day, numbers wise, mate?
That was the one I said the other day. 16.
16 a day. Yep.
Yeah.
But over the next few months, we're running out of questions here, guys. So last call for questions. I've got one though for you, mate. Over the next few months, if we were going to be fishing for marlin on lures around the Sydney area, what advice would you have about lure sizes, styles, that sort of thing, colours?
I personally run colors. I think just run one of each. There's 5. You've got 5 lures generally when you're chasing them on lures. Run a Lumo. Lumo's always pretty popular. Blues, pinks, purples, green. They're probably the 5 colors really that are in the main spectrum of lure fishing. And general lure fishing would be done in January. They sort of rock up. I find we have a decent bite in January, like in the years gone by. Early January on the shelf can be really good. Like we had a good session last year where we went out and there was bait out on the shelf, and we started switching, and we switched 6, and then the next day we switched 4, and it was like pretty good for Sydney. Really, like if you can catch more than 2 off Sydney, I think it's a good day. It's more just being Johnny on the spot with Sydney. If you're there when they're going past, it's like fishing at JB or Port Stephens or Costa, wherever is a good bite.
Yep. All right. Tell us about drags for trolling lures, mate. What do you set your drag at?
I run it at strike drag generally. Like it depends. If I'm running light gauge hooks, I'll run the drag. If I'm trolling lures for striped marlin, I'll run light gauge hooks. Generally on 15 kilo, and probably 3 or 4 kilos of drag until we're sort of settled down in the fight, and then I'll put it up to 5, 6 kilos.
Yep. All right. Advantages and disadvantages of rubber bands versus Dacron loops for the outrigger clips.
For the outrigger, oh, okay. I just think a bit of stretch. I think sometimes with the rubber band, you sort of it's a bit harder for it to pop the clip. Whereas the Dacron loop's solid, so it only has a certain amount of stretch. Well, the tag line, the rigger line only has a certain amount of stretch before the clip will pop. Obviously, that's my thing. Plus, rubber bands. The good thing about Dacron loop is, especially when you have people on the boat that aren't they're new to it or aren't confident with tying a rubber band on your main line. I think it's just easier to go put it on the clip. Like there's no guesswork. If I set it up, or if the rods are set, a short rod and a long rod, you put one on the one side and one on the other. It's not right. Yeah, it makes life. It's a lot quicker.
Yep,
that's the biggest thing. Like,
okay, cool. Going back here to bridle rigging your baits, mate. Through the nose or through the front of the eyes?
Like through the front of the eye socket. Yeah, it's sort of right behind the nose, basically.
Favorite circle hook? Light gauge or medium gauge for striped marlin?
Packet here. I use them. I don't really know what they're called. Light gauge, I think. The medium gauge there. Medium gauge eagle claw. I think they're called those LF something, LF10Os. I know what they look like. I don't read the packets too much. I make enough rigs of them. I should know exactly what they do. I basically keep, this is sort of like a box of, I don't know if you can see it, but I basically just keep all different size leaders made up, ready to go for all different types of, I don't know if you can see them, but yeah, I try and you just sort of have all bases covered when you're out there, because you don't know, things can change. There might be an inshore bite and you're out on the shelf and you switch it over, or
Yep. All right, this might be our last question, I reckon, mate. So when you're fishing out of Sydney, what makes you decide to stay in close and have a go inshore as opposed to heading out wide?
Probably time of year and water quality. Like I think it has to be pretty good water for them to be inshore. Generally, like, obviously good temperature is helpful. So anything over sort of 22 degrees. But yeah, good colour is always good. Blacks don't seem to care. Catch them in dirty water. Stripes, I like it when there's blacks and stripes. Obviously, there's just a bit more chance of catching a marlin rather than one species being around and not the other.
Yep. Now, there are a few more questions here, actually, mate. So if you're happy to go through them, we'll keep plugging away.
Yeah, no worries.
So how many wraps on a rubber band?
10, 12.
Not an exact science?
Nah. As long as it doesn't slip. As long as they're tight wraps, really.
How do you gauge the depth when you're bombing a bait down?
In all honesty, generally, if you're bombing it straight down, you watch it on the sounder. That's really what I do. Yeah, and the other thing is a lot of my rods have, like I usually use my long bait rod as a bombing rod, like as my spare long bait rod. So it's got a marker at about 40 or 50 meters. So once I know that's out, I know there's 50 meters out as well. If I can't see, if I'm still driving forward or if the bait's not straight under the boat.
Yep. Cool. Shane wants to know if you come and give him a bit of tuition, mate. Might let you have a chat with Shane offline, eh?
Yeah.
All right, last question. So how do you attach Dacron to the main line for your rigger clip, a whip or a loop?
You probably don't want to know how I do it, but I splice it on. So I use splice, what do you call it? Hollow core. No, I use Dacron. And then before I tie the double, I put a needle through it and splice it up the main line and then whip it on with wax thread. But it's probably not worth it realistically. You could just do a loop and whip the loop on, save you a lot of time. And yeah.
Excellent.
Cool.
All right, mate. Look, we've been going for an hour, and folks, it's been a great session. There's been tons of great questions. There's been a bit of banter as well. It's been awesome having you all here. So thank you for all those great questions. Thank you for participating. Thank you, Mike Bonnici, for coming along and sharing your wisdom. It's been fantastic to have you here. And of course, thank you to Navico and Simrad for making these sessions possible. It's the last one for 2021. Hopefully we'll be back in 2022 for some more of this stuff. But till then, go safe. Have a safe Christmas, everyone. Travel well. Catch plenty of fish. And Mike, thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me. See ya.
Cheers, mate.